module, and that is the process of communication. Okay, so we have the following objectives. Number one, discuss how communication takes place. Number two, identify the elements involved in the process of communication. And number three, differentiate the characteristics of the two channels of communication. So let us proceed. So the process of communication basically is a sequence of activities where message is sent is understood by the receiver in its intended meaning. All right? Communication also is the process that connects the sender with the receiver of the message. Therefore, it is a series of actions, operations, or a series of changes directed to some end. So, by learning the process of communication, we would be able to know how communication works. So let's talk about the elements of communication, all right? So again, take a look at your module. So we have the following. So we have the elements of communication. The first one is sender. Okay? So sender is the source of information. He is the one who tends to initiate the idea or initiate the conversation or the communication process itself. This is where the message is coming from. Message, this refers to the ideas or information. So what does the message of the sender will be conveying to the recipient or to the receiver? Of course, we have the channel, and the channel refers to the medium itself. What type of medium will be the sender, or will the sender be using in transmitting the message? So it could be in the form of a written form of medium, or it could be in a text form, which is also part of the written form, isn't it? Okay? Or it could be a face-to-face type of medium. Or it could be using an online class like this, and then we are going to talk with each other face to face, but by using a computer application for us to communicate. So that is a medium already, right? What else? Okay. Well, if I could be using a type of channel through the use of different symbols, okay, that is also another type of channel. Can you think of other channels aside from what we have mentioned? The next one is the receiver. Of course, this is the person or a group where the message will be received. Okay, so he's the one who's going to receive the message. Another elements of communication is the noise. So when you talk about the noise, this is everything that tends to hinder or affects the communication process. Therefore, it affects the communication process to become successful. So noise could be just about anything. Okay? Anything that tends to interfere with the communication process. And last but not the least is feedback. Okay? So the feedback is the receiver's response to the sender's message. So the question here is feedback important? Okay, what is the role of feedback in our communication process? So here we have the illustration of the elements of communication. And I would like anybody to explain this to us, please. All right? So I would like you to explain the elements of communication. Anybody? Okay, so of course, we have here the sender and we have the message. So one thing that we were not able to explain a while ago is the process of encoding. So when you say encoding, this is the process where the sender tends to put his message and encoded it to the type of medium he will be using. All right? So if I am going to use a written form of communication and I will be use a piece of paper, the process of writing my message is already considered encoding. That is the same way when you encode it in your computer or on your cell phone. Okay? Decoding, on the other hand, is the opposite. Decoding is the process, the way the receiver tends to decode the message or the meaning that he is trying to receive. So before the receiver can completely understand the message, he tends first to absorb it first. He tends to first analyze the message itself. Sometimes if we are slow, sometimes we try to say it like, wait a minute, I'm still processing the message, right? I'm still in the stage of understanding the message. That is the decoding part of the receiver. And then, of course, when the receiver reacted and gives feedback, the receiver becomes the sender, and eventually the sender becomes the receiver. You may also notice in this illustration, the noise is coming from everywhere. All right? So the noise is coming from the sender, coming from the message, the medium, or the receiver. Can you give me an example of a noise coming from the sender? What about a noise coming from the message? Give me an example on that one. What about a noise coming from the medium? Anybody? And what about the noise coming from the receiver himself? Okay, so since we are talking about feedback, I asked you a question a while ago, is feedback important? But before we proceed to feedback, let me ask you this. So let's just say the communication process is complete. There is the sender, there is the idea or the message, he encoded it, he used a medium through, let's just say, verbal communication face-to-face. The receiver decoded it, and the receiver give a feedback to the sender. My question is communication successful? Please do explain. So since we were talking about feedback, here are the important elements of feedback. All right? So it allows senders to improve communication with the receiver by allowing the receiver to clarify doubts, allowing receiver to ask questions, enables the sender to know the efficiency of his message, and also in response to the receiver's understanding and suggestion on the message, the sender can eventually adjust the subsequent message. All right? So if there are any doubts from the part of the receiver, he can clarify that through by giving feedbacks. Or if the message is received but the receiver needs to know more information, he can ask more questions to the sender, isn't it? And thus build confidence in a way. Also, feedback serves as a determining factor whether the communication process is successful or not. Okay? So the sender, without feedback, the sender will not be able to know whether the message has been received by the recipient successfully. So if there will be no feedback, that is quite impossible to know. And also, through feedback, the sender could eventually adjust his message. Okay, what do we mean by that? So if the receiver responded back saying, can you repeat that because I cannot understand that? Can you speak a little bit louder? And that is the feedback. So therefore, the sender would adjust the way he transmitted the message. He will make his voice now clearer and louder. That is what you mean by in response to receiver's understanding and suggestions on the message, upon which the sender can adjust the way he transmit the message. All right? We come now to the next topic, and the topic is channels of communication. So would you want to read to me what you mean by formal communication? Go ahead. And somebody read the informal communication for me, please. So based on what you read, what is now the difference between the two? So when you say formal communication, this is a type of channel being recognized by the organization structure. It follows the chain of command for disseminating pertinent information. So any communication or official communication mentioned by the top management to the middle management and middle management to the rank and file, it is considered formal and official communication. So since we are talking about organizational communication, we have three different distinct formal paths. We have the vertical, we have the horizontal, and the diagonal. Vertical, it could be upward or downward. So if ever that the top management communicated with the middle management, and the middle management communicated to the rank and file, that is downward form of communication, that is considered vertical. Or it could be vice versa. The rank and file reported back to the middle management, and middle management reported to the top management. That is upward vertical type of communication. Horizontal, it flows amongst the people at the same level. So if I am a manager and I will be talking to my co-manager, that is horizontal type of communication. So there is a managerial meeting from different departments. We are all managers, we are in the same level, that is horizontal. Diagonal. It flows amongst the people of different departments at different levels. So this is kind of mixed. So if I am a marketing manager and I will be talking to the rank and file, and this is official communication, to the rank and file belonging to the human resources department, that is an example of diagonal. So I'm communicating to different department and to a different level. Since I'm talking to a rank and file, not my co-manager, and I'm talking to a different department, since I'm from marketing department and I'm speaking with the rank and file or staff in the human resources department. That is an example of diagonal formal channels. So we have the following formal communication. The advantages of merits of formal communication. Would somebody read this for me, please? And also, would somebody read to me the limitation of formal communication or the disadvantage of formal communication? So informal communication channel is, sometimes we call it as grapevine. So it is the opposite of formal communication, meaning it is unofficial. Okay, it is unofficial. So you just simply heard somebody talking about a certain manager, and just out of the blue, you heard about it. So it could possibly true, or it possibly not true. And those conversations might be or might not be connected with the company's activities. That's why we call it informal communication. So, however, there is the advantages of grapevine or informal communication. And that is, it connects almost to everybody, right? So there's no need for you to wait for the manager to speak. It flows in every direction. You could heard it in any department. Does not follow chain of command because it could be coming from anybody in the company. Fast channel, no need to choose what type of channels you're going to use. It occurs in a work site or even outside. It could also rise out on a social or personal interaction. Okay, so again, it is not related to company official information, so that's why it could rise out in any social conversation. So it is based on the people themselves, not on the task given by the company. It usually occurs orally, and it occurs in communication chain, meaning, it comes from the second hand, third hand, fourth hand person that sometimes you do not know whether that information is already correct.